The art style changes so forcibly in Rome in the 3rd century that we actually have a new name for it. When we're talking about the late empire, we can also refer to the art style as Roman Expressionism. Expressionism refers to distortion or abstraction of line, shape, or color in order to convey an idea or a feeling. In other words, we're distorting to make something more emotional. I think you can see that on the face of Trajan Decius. And that is going to continue in Roman art in the 3rd century and probably into the 4th as well. Just a reminder that in the world of the ancient Romans, even under Hadrian, at the height of Roman control, there were revolts, there were concerns that the military had to take care of. Hadrian, for example, had to go into Jerusalem to put down a rebellion by the Jews. He also was building a wall. So this is something that was present in maintaining the empire throughout the history of the Roman Empire. However, it becomes incredibly critical by the time we hit the 3rd century, when Rome experiences a drop in its own abilities to control its borders, and also a decline in the economy of the Roman world as German tribes continue to pound on the border. We also have internal disruption, and that certainly is struggles over who is going to be the emperor. I would like to give you just a statistic here. For a 50-year period in the middle of the Roman Empire in the 3rd century, the Romans had around 21 emperors. These folks are not dying in bed. This is rapid turnover, and it is turnover by assassination. This is going to cause your country to feel unstable and insecure, and it's going to drive your people to seek comfort in outside sources. It is also certainly going to influence the art style, because by now I think we know that art reflects the culture of the people who made it. One of the things that's going to happen in the 3rd century is there are going to be new burial practices that take place in the Roman world. And we do think that this is an influence in particular of Christianity, but perhaps of additional mystery religions that come from the East. Prior to this point in time, the Romans tended to cremate their dead. There is a change, however, and in this period we begin to get bodies being buried in coffins or inside a sarcophagus. Plural would be sarcophagi. What we're looking at right here is the Ludovisi. The Ludovisi sarcophagus is figure 769 in our textbook, and you also have a Smart History video on this. I'd like you to look at it because the Smart History folks are better able to give you some of the details, close-ups that you can see pretty well, than I can do simply in a PowerPoint presentation. But I'd like to add a few things for you to look at along the way, and one of them is an emphasis on the fact that this is revealing a new burial practice. And at the root of that, it's because the ancient Romans were not being satisfied by the traditional religious practices that were in place. What they start to do in this period of meltdown in the ancient Roman world is to turn to outside sources for security and comfort. Anything that would provide them with a sense of security and confidence. They turn to philosophy, and they also turn to religion. In particular, they turn to mystery religions from the East. Okay, what's a mystery religion? Well, a mystery religion is a religion where you have to learn the beliefs along the way. You become essentially indoctrinated into the teachings of that cult practice. And you are initiated, probably initiated is a better word, you're initiated along the way. One of these mystery religions that will become the most powerful and important is Christianity. It does come from the East. It has information that has to be learned, and it has steps of initiation along the path to that end. Just for example, think of baptism as one of the initiation rites of Christianity. These mystery religions also promise you comfort and, generally speaking, promise you a better world in the afterlife, so that there is a great deal of comfort being suggested to the new initiate, the new person who is going to join this faith. The mystery religion that is depicted in the sarcophagus is the cult of Mithras. Mithras is an individual who's known, often associated with the god of light of Zoroastrianism. And he was an individual particularly important to the military who did promise a continued afterlife. And that, I think, is one of the appealing elements of the belief, the following of Mithras, which is depicted here. The subject of this itself is important. It is the Romans fighting the barbarians, something that was consuming the efforts of the military in the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. The commander, and we don't know who he was, but he's located right here. He's the guy who was buried in the sarcophagus. He is leading the victorious Roman soldiers, and I will leave you to look at the Smart History video to get a better depiction of this, as they are triumphing over the barbarians who tend to fill the lower portion of this very, very crowded relief carving. For right now, what I would like to focus on is the religious aspect of this. And that shows up in a closer look at our soldier, who is at the very top of this composition. There is chaos all around him, but he is calm, and he goes forward into battle with no weapon. And the reason for that is the battle he's fighting really isn't against the barbarians, it is against death. So he embraces death with an open hand, no need for fear, no weapon, because he knows his god, Mithras, will help him. He bears the mark right here, the X on his forehead of Mithras, and he also has a serpent behind him, which is a symbol associated with Mithras. The most telling part of this, though, is his total confidence in facing death, because he knows his God will protect and help him and provide him with an afterlife. If you go over to the lower right portion of my screen, you're actually going to see a depiction of Mithras, who was a warrior god and consequently, I think, much embraced by the Roman soldiers. You will find, for example, along Hadrian's Wall, a number of temples to Mithras and a lot of graffiti that references Mithras. Mithras is associated with the sun or with light, and I think he has a bit of a complex history. He also had 2 amazing feats that he had to accomplish. One of those is to capture the sacred bull of creation, and that's what you're looking at in the lower right slide. And he had to sacrifice it in order to provide blood to bring a flowering of the earth, to bring back plants and crops. In other words, we think that Mithras, somewhere along the line, is also blended with an early fertility divine being. And that is conveyed right here with the serpent. The snake in non-Western cultures usually is a pretty important player. In Christian traditions, however, the snake has become associated with evil. That's not what it was viewed as in the ancient world. It was instead considered to be a symbol of renewal, rebirth, and resurrection. The reason for that is that snakes shed their skin. And you can see the new birth, the new snake, coming out of its old skin. So Mithras then takes on an incredible promise of continuation and rebirth in the next world to followers who trust him and are devoted to him and are willing to become initiated, to learn the content of his teaching. And that became so important to Roman soldiers in these troubled times. Others, of course, will turn to different Eastern traditions in religion, seeking new beliefs, beliefs that will provide comfort in times of great insecurity. Naturally, it is Christianity, out of all of those choices, that is going to rise up and become the premier religion and ultimately the legal religion of the Roman Empire. What we're looking at here is 778 in our textbook. You also have a Smart History video that deals with this. It is a giant head of Constantine. The slide on the left, in fact, the picture stands itself, just the head, over 8.5 feet in height. So it's a gigantic statue of Constantine. Constantine is important because he is the first Roman emperor to accept Christianity and actually to make Christianity practicable. He makes it legal for Romans to practice any religion that they choose. What I would like you to see here, though, Constantine is also a Roman emperor, is the way in which his image has changed. The face of Constantine looks heavenward. It seems to be incredibly abstract and otherworldly. The eyes actually are kind of large and out of proportion to the face, so this is definitely an abstraction, and the modeling is reduced. We don't have as much finessing in terms of the shape of the face. In other words, Constantine is becoming otherworldly. This is the direction that images take, moving away from the naturalism of this world to abstraction and to spiritual qualities of the other, of the heavenly realm, in fact. Let me finish the late empire with this. I'm going to be returning to this later, so it's something you'll see again. The dates actually are important. I don't want you to memorize them, but I would like you to understand the sequence of what happens. Constantine is the emperor in the early 4th century. And in 313, after a visionary experience, the Emperor Constantine is going to issue the Edict of Milan. The Edict of Milan allows Christians to practice openly, but also Jews and anyone else who doesn't wish to embrace the traditional practice of paganism that had been held for centuries in the Roman world. So it gives you freedom to do any religious practice you want. And that means you no longer are obliged to worship the Roman dead emperors or to worship Jupiter, for that matter, so that you can be a monotheist in this new reality. Constantine also, in 330, is going to found a city to the east. It's going to be called Constantinople after Constantine, and it's going to signal a shift in the influence in the Roman world toward the east, away from the west. Constantine then sets off the 4th century by making Christianity legal, but guess what? By the year 380, it actually has grown in importance to the extent that it becomes the official state religion in the Roman world. This is astonishing. Even more surprising, by the year 391, paganism is banned in the Roman world. You can no longer legally worship the old gods. As a part of this, by 394, the games are banned. These games have been practiced for centuries and were a strong part of the culture. Why banish the games? Well, the games were dedicated to the pagan gods, so they were associated with the old religion. What this means is, by the end of the 4th century, we have left behind the ancient world of the Greeks and the Romans, and we enter a new one, and it is the period of early Christianity.